I pulled up in the Muggsy Bogues with the pennies, cause I'm short on time. So don't be short on a penny. In all New York, they would envy the flavor. Now it's a bunch of white girls calling delis bodegas. Elegant player. Guys they call relevant major. Look to me for how we step in their game. So I'm like relevant to who? Because I'm not watching. I feel like Jeff Van Gundy yelling, stop flopping. Own the company, they ain't even got stock options. When you time this, you don't care if you not popping. Please. Married to this fly shit I got poppins. Haters got a list mile long and shit they not stopping. Shots dropping out here sipping scotch like I'm Ron Swanson. How you sign a deal to act gangster with a cop option? Wow. New day, new work. Straight sauce like the drums could see. The kick make the groove work. When clicks is the new worth. The risk to be true hurts. I live this, I'd lose first. Before I'd win, cutting corners just to up the score. Obstacles gon' pop at you, just got a budget for 'em. But look at the impression that the passion make. I guess there was a method to my madness, ayy. I pulled up in the Chris Mullen, St. John's cause the storm coming. I see a lot of lightning, but I don't hear the thunder though. You gotta let it roll. I already told you I'm short on time. Fuck your little clicks, we do more offline. Bitch, I'm in a zone. Why you so pressed? Give me what I'm owed, not a cent less. This ain't Morse code, say what you mean. The money come first, but the paper too green. Yeah, there gotta be something more that I'm running towards than the wind.
Snap back, but I'm well fitted. F it or well figured. I wish him well while I'm throwing pennies at well wishes. You get it later. I'm blunt with flavor like stale swishes. Smoke with the switcher, that fire stick you inhale quicker. Or hell the Riddler, the hell he raising, the hell with ya. Split up the clique, cause they all switch. No hell Hitler. Now Allen get you, no Gilligans. I die skipper. Make sure your men know I'm the wave like my ginger. Don't be a boat rocker, cut a shot. Both choppers, old shot that got your ears ringing. That's a dough knocker, blow dropper. I go acapella like the old opera, flow proper. I say absolute like this the old vodka. I feel at home, partner. You and your partners be at home. Got you waiting on that bag. You some home shoppers. Show time to a show watcher. I show the parts where they show doctors about to pull a plug. I'm a showstopper. On Harlem Nights, I'm a globe trotter and gold products plus the gold standard. My gold diggers and gold slaughter. Two minds craft so me and Marlon can craft a monster. That chupacabra, the shooter come with the Uber driver. You not a rider, you and your sponsors forgot them bonkers. My coach is conjure with D as hot as that blocking Yonkers. Not a monster who's all the war, divide and conquer, but I wear fitted like Humphrey Bogart and Casablanca.
I already told you I'm short on time. Fuck your little clicks, we do more offline. Bitch, I'm in a zone. Why you so pressed? Give me what I'm owed, not a cent less. This ain't Morse code, say what you mean. The money come first, but the paper too green. There gotta be something more that I'm running towards than the wind.
I got standards.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 6 Pixels Under podcast. Sorry, my timing is off because I was actually messing with some of the settings as usual. You'll see that stuff changing in the background. The light back there makes me look like I'm like coming from heaven or some shit. I'm not. Okay. How's everybody doing? I wanted to talk about the recent death of the game, BLR, or Blacklight Retribution. So Blacklight Retribution was a free-to-play game. And honestly, it's probably one of the most well-known free-to-play games. Like, yeah, the new age of free-to-play games is kind of crazy. Like, just in terms of, like... Sorry, I'm getting things to kind of move stuff around. Also, thinking of turning this light on. Let's see. Okay. Looks alright. We'll just run with that. Excuse me. Anyway, it's one of the most well-known free-to-play games, especially back then. It might have been missed by many of you if you were playing like Battlefield or Call of Duty, because around that same time, new iterations of that series or those series came out. If that makes sense. So, sorry. I'm messing around with the camera a little bit today. A little bit, but you know what I mean. Okay, so some recent news came out. We're not going to stream for long today, but we are going to be about the shits. AKA shit's going to be crazy. I'm going to talk about some stuff. So the Riot MMO just lost another key staffer. This time it's technical director. And this is a big deal because they lost Greg Ghostcrawler Street, who then went and formed his own company to make his own game. It's also VJ Thakar is the recent person that left. He was essentially, it was him and Greg Street that were supposed to make things happen. Now here's the thing. As far as I understand and my knowledge of VJ and his career since he worked on Galaxies, VJ's a tech guy. So if you can't come up with an idea, I don't think he can help you really build anything else beside that. That's not to say that like tech guys don't have ideas or handcraft worlds. Look at Raftcoster. But it's just like historically the tech guy is not the one that's also the one world building or even writing, right? There's different roles. Now I'm not going to mince words. It's actually why I wanted to talk about Riot. Maybe I should even go big screen for this, but I'll just leave it like this. No, I'll go big screen. So the issue with Riot is that Riot has obviously put tons and tons of money into their MMO idea that we've never seen anything shown for. On top of that, after Ghostcrawler left Riot and went and started working on his own game, the ideas he came out with and the game he came out with, and it's in early stages, they're still evolving it, obviously. Look, I'll just be blunt. Ideas that I talked about on stream before as being kind of, that's what all the time spent and money spent helped you guys arrive at that. You know, like that's kind of what my idea was. It's like, frankly speaking, I think Ghostcrawler's MMO and Virtual World are frankly low-level ideas. I don't think they're very like innovative, but they sell themselves like, oh, shards and like that. You mean instancing? Like, we don't have to pretend it's like something else more than it actually is, especially when it doesn't really help things. Yeah, I would say he's not the creative engine, generally speaking. Anyway, so now you've lost a tech guy, you lost a creative guy. As far as I understand, that's what Ghostcrawler was. If it sounds like I'm kind of negative about developers lately, guys, it's because here's my current stance. I have met a lot of great developers. Dozens of them. Dozens and dozens of them. And I'm talking like very smart, even if they weren't doing video game development, still smart. But even just some of those developers that are just like next level. I'm very fortunate with my job and like platform to have talked to like some high level developers. And let me say there's levels to that shit, you know? There really is. You encounter the developer that feels more like a jobber right? Someone who just takes the next contract, not caring about their skills or what the project actually is. And then you encounter those developers, even if they're not creators, that are so laser focused on what they're doing, feels like nobody could do their job better than them. The problem in the MMO and virtual world industry, especially at the moment, is that doesn't really exist. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Let's talk about it. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm making a video about this, but a big reason is complexity. Virtual worlds are very complex. So thus being a good developer in a virtual world, or for them, be difficult. Part of that is because it's always online. The other part is because, at least what most people are trying to do with their games, they're trying to simulate a world. And simulating a world is actually really difficult. I keep looking down here because my camera's usually here. Other things would be like cost. It's expensive to make a virtual world. Not just complex, but it's expensive. The other thing is that, and this is just, a sad truth, it's why I'm not so high on the developers right now, is that the developers, especially in the virtual world industry, historically, like right now, I should say, historically, very good. Right now, not very good. I have met dozens of the current age of developers that, develop on modern virtual worlds, whether massive or not, mostly not massive. And the level of knowledge is much, 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 much lower. Their level of dedication to the craft is much lower. Their level of dedication to the genre that they develop in is lower. And you might say, oh, but this is just your experience. Yeah, I know. I'm just speaking from my anecdotal experience. But as many of you know, I've tested pretty much all the major MMOs and virtual worlds of the past 15 years. And I've been to a few studios to either test or offer advice. I also do consulting work with developers. So I give a lot of advice, not for free. But something I want to talk about is that when you're not constantly... So I've talked about this before, but maybe I'll put this into a little short format. When you're not when you're not really immersing yourself in your craft, while it's not easy to be noticed by most people, as the collective knowledge gets higher and higher, it does become easier to notice. This is kind of what people talk about when they talk about aging out of something. As you get older, you're supposed to get smarter. So how does that necessarily work? Well, it's because sometimes the people that are getting older are not getting new information. And so the new kids are. And they're for example, with health, the health crisis in the United States, the younger generation is a lot more aware of it. They know what's bad. They know what's causing the issues, so on and so forth. So it's not that they're smarter necessarily. I don't want to make that argument, because we're using the same human brain and we have been for thousands of years. But it's more that they have new information, right? And that new information makes things easier for them, right? And can also make things harder. And let's talk about virtual worlds, as the new generation is less and less equipped to deal with what a virtual world is. Now, for many people, you might just say, oh, what's the problem? Just make the virtual world more acceptable, make it more appealing. Here's the problem. The problem is the entire purpose of a world is so that you have to overcome challenges, right? There's no world that exists except synthetic crafted worlds that just don't have a lot of believability to them or immersion that let you win all the time. It just doesn't really happen. Let me get some music in the background. Anyway, So, this is a problem because basically you could have people like Greg Street, Ghostcrawler, whatever else. I mean, I'd love to speak with them to feel otherwise, because that's actually something I also want to talk about, is that the old age developers, none of them were really like righteous. Like, I would say like Raph was like one of the more righteous old school like virtual world developers, and what I mean by that is that like he wanted to be hands off in regards to how you crafted a world. One of the other pioneers of one of the first MUDs ever, Richard Partle, had the opposite stance. He wrote a book on it. He believed that you should essentially be God in whatever world that you create. Otherwise, you're going to have issues. And you're going to be ruled by your inmates. And by your, inhabitants of your world, if you will. And that's not a crazy school of thought. You look at like Brad McQuaid. He was famous for being pretty toxic, and when I say toxic, this word has been used, to death, unfortunately. When I mean toxic, I mean, I don't actually hide from the word toxic myself. Like, I'm toxic, personally. Because I grew up on the internet like most of these same developers I'm referencing. And for many of us, even if we were being social and having an identity in the real world, we felt more so like we got to have our identity better in the online world, right? That's why so many of us spent so much time in these games, right? It's no secret that people like Asmongold, made World of Warcraft their second life, no pun intended. And people like me made Galaxies and a bunch of other games like that. So, and there's other content creator examples too, but like Lazy Peon's name comes from WoW, and so on and so forth. So many of these like worlds and kind of like even unhealthy addictions and like interests in them have led and lead to the change or better understanding of kind of how things function. And then, to be clear, understanding is not a linear graph, meaning that just playing something more doesn't mean you understand it more. But we're talking about like the content creators, specifically like the ones who analyze stuff. And we've obviously had a lot of time playing these games and look at them a bit differently than most people, which is helpful, I would say. So going back to the Riot MMO thing, the thing about this that drives me mad is this. Who is running the ship? Because I know the guys in charge love MMOs, Trindamere, Mark Merrill, so on and so forth. But then, do you guys just not know how to manage one? It's just strange because you have so much money you could pay somebody to just analyze virtual worlds. And then just have them report back something. But here's the problem. How many people in the world are capable of doing that? This is not me just blowing smoke. My guess is a couple of the people in the room right now. Like me and a couple of you guys. And a couple of my friends that I know personally that might not be in chat, but they're in my Discord. Meaning it's not impossible, but it's simultaneously not easy, right? And what I'm trying to say is I've talked about this a little bit before, but Guild Wars 2 and other, more old school developer, or rather virtual worlds, got famous for taking kind of famous players and making them developers. Now in the modern day system, this only gets talked about in terms of exploitation. Internships, and just paying people junior dev money. To be clear, I don't think that that's what's actually going on here and what I'm trying to emphasize. What I'm saying more so is that if you focus on acquiring new skills for your current developers, you can circumvent a lot of this. But if they aren't willing to learn and you don't have the skilled developers in place, you have to actually look to the community. Because the truth is the community does know more than the developers do. And this is, oh my god, controversial, I know, but here's what I mean. Regarding specifics, probably not, right? Every player? Obviously not. Most criticism that players give is really bad. Have you ever read reviews? But what I'm trying to say is this. I personally know many MMO players, again, dozens of us, the Arrested Development meme, but I know dozens of them that are incredibly intelligent at world building and system designing that could come up with the systems and ideas that many of these games could necessarily, benefit from. But why aren't they given the opportunity to do that? How could they even get the opportunity? Well, here's the thing. We need to see some more like amateur to professional pipelines that don't just include you having worked on completely different games. This is a big problem, and I cover this in my upcoming video on multiverses, that game development is evolving, guys. Back in the day, we would have studios who were like, fuck it, we just got this contract to make this RPG, and this RPG, and this shooter, and let's do it. And then, of course, the age of publishers came, where they picked developer studios just to work on specific games. But the thing is that, like, first off, those aren't the only two ways to do things. But, like, now in modern times, you have, like, I guess you would say, like, I don't even know if I can call them MMO developers or virtual world developers, because I'm talking about gaming more in general, which is that gaming in general is a lot more accessible than it was before. So now you can have developers making all kinds of different games and players playing all kinds of different games. The problem is that as gaming gets more complex, I actually don't think that that's entirely tenable. And yes, there's some examples. For example, filmmaking. You might have a developer, or rather director, who makes like 4 different genre films. But I would think that they would still use a lot of their same skills and core aspects, right? And so what I'm trying to say is that, yes, I know with Veilguard and other games like that coming out just recently, Avowed, the level of writing in gaming is very low. And that's surprising to people because it was so high in the past and has not gotten better. The reason why that's the case, and I've actually spoke to Chris Avalon about this, is that a scriptwriter could literally get a couple $1 million for selling a script in Hollywood. You're never getting that kind of money in video games. Not yet. And so there's a certain level of, like, this happens in sports with MMA and like the NFL. Why don't more NFL, level athletes go to the MMA? Because the money and opportunity isn't there. Because it's not as guaranteed going through the whole process from kid to adult. You see what I'm saying? So, like, that's a problem that's happening in gaming as well. Where there's not much of a pipeline to get developers players into the developer positions. And while in many other jobs and other, like, fields of gaming, that's okay. And other fields are a lot more accessible for indie devs anyway. You kind of get what I'm getting at? What I'm trying to say is this. We have to meet in the middle. Because indie games are making things like RPGs and even shooters and single-player games more accessible for all kinds of devs, so there's opportunity for you there. If you're a smaller dev or a dev without much experience but tons of gaming experience and a lot of ideas, there's not a lot of, like, pipeline for you. I think that there is a way that Riot could affect things like that. Put out a bad signal. Ask for a bunch of people to help you with ideas and, give a bunch of different people opportunities. The point is that look at your massive community that already exists and probably have already, like, a lot of talented people in it, and search within there. No, that's not a way to just scam people out of their money and pay, like, the fans less money. No, it's because these fans probably know better than the developers do. In this case, we're talking about virtual worlds, a field that developers... I'm gonna blow your guys' mind. You guys ready for this? Okay. I never even fucking thought about this shit before, so this is crazy. The chances of developers in the virtual world industry having played more than the most hardcore players is almost zero. It's almost zero. What other field is like that? Think about that for a second. Think about that. And I know people might say, what are you basing this on? I know a lot of developers, even some major ones. And I played more than them when I was 11. and still play more than them. And I'm 20 years older. So you see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of these devs just don't play the games. And they don't play that many games. And I think that that's a problem. And I'm not just talking about the old guys that didn't adapt. I'm talking about, like, the newer age devs, too. The devs that have, like, you know, Ratchet and Clank as their last game, but somehow get put in charge of, like, the major virtual world. It's just like, that's the only way that makes sense is this. If that developer is a fucking nerd. Excuse my French. But do you get what I'm saying? If their only history is developing like Ratchet and Clank, what the fuck do they know about world building? On a virtual world scale, on a massive scale, on even just a more PG scale. They don't know anything. Like, that would have to have come from their ability to immerse themselves in the art. And you see this in music all the time. I've talked about this quote before, but I'll use it as an example. That Dr. Dre says, like, look, if you people ask me what I like all the time, and I can list like a billion different songs I like and artists, and people are surprised by that. And he says, you have to constantly immerse yourself. He's like, I love this stuff, but I need to constantly be learning more about it. And I think to myself, I'm like, that has not been the case for virtual worlds, right? We just haven't had that level of stability, let alone just like that level of market, right? And again, you know, part of why the virtual world industry feels a bit kind of like stuck in the mud right now is partly because of this, right? It's because the developer's skill level isn't increasing, and players essentially have a higher knowledge than the developers do. And I think that's a big problem right now. A big problem. And I've spoke to people like Josh Strife Hayes and Raph Koster, and they agree. They think it's a problem. That you look at, like, people love to use Yoshi P as an example, and I'll use this quote in my video, but Raph made a point about Yoshi P. He said, people often cite Yoshi P as having played UO and it being one of his favorite games. But what they don't mention is that he wasn't tasked with studying UO. Yoshi just grew up playing UO in Japan, which actually had a pretty decent-sized Japanese audience. Meaning he organically learned how to play and experience the world. So that's why if you've ever, like, talked with, probably most of you haven't, obviously, including myself. I've seen him, but I never talked to Yoshi P, or seen his talks, is what I'm trying to say. What you'll notice is that he knows a lot about MMOs and virtual worlds, period. Not just 14, not just the WoW clone style, but, like, period. He knows a lot about the industry, period. I think he's actually one of the most, and I've said this before on record, one of the most talented devs in the space. But how did he get there? Was it just being a developer? No. It was being a dedicated player. And I think that while that shouldn't necessarily be a requirement for every single developer, when your leaders don't have that level of dedication, I don't know. It's pretty worrying to me. So Riot MMO, long story short, hire some nerds. Fucking fight over some ideas. And come up with something. Come on, what are you guys doing? We need you guys to help out the industry. You guys are just spinning your fucking wheels and shit. So recent news about NCSoft, during Q4, their financials came out, and it turns out that Guild Wars 2 and Blade and Soul, for the first time in forever, pretty much, actually topped the earnings charts. And this is pretty cool because it means that there's, like, potential that ArenaNet will continue to put money into those games, especially with the confirmation, according to a big rumor, of Guild Wars 3 already on the horizon, Blade and Soul supposedly actually getting their remake, and Ion 2, as it's actually supposed to be called, waiting in the wings, as they say in the article, on Massively OP. So, I mean, when asked about details of Ion 2, NCSoft wouldn't really give any details, which is, I just hope it's not mobile slop, because here's the thing. I think I told you guys this. NCSoft, got their dice and bet hard as fuck on mobile. The problem is, you can bet hard on a genre if you're actually expanding it. If you're just trying to like cash in on it, there's a limit you can do that. The player base is gonna get smart enough to know that this is stupid, right? Or that this sucks. And that happened with NCSoft's mobile games. Maybe not their remastered ones, but like the other ones they tried, like the spin-off games. They made a lot of money, and then they crashed. And their whole mobile market the past year crashed, like significantly. So I hope that Ion 2 is not mobile-based, but I also hope at the same time, if it is, they're gonna learn a lesson. To not put all your eggs in one basket. Also, NCSoft has one of the coolest buildings ever. I would have loved to work on this. As you guys know, I worked in construction for like 7 to 8 years, and I would have loved working on this job. I always was a sucker for just, you know, jobs that look cool. This is according to the head honcho at NCSoft. Park Byung-moo says, I'm also aware that the MMORPG market's not growing. I think the reason why it's not growing in Korea and Taiwan, traditionally strong markets, is because games similar to Lineage like have been released more than MMORPGs with new experiences, causing users to become bored. Literally just what I said. But I mean, at least he's aware of it, right? It's good if your leader's aware of this stuff. But do you see the difference between like how Korea handles things? Point me out a virtual world studio right now in the US that has like Yoshi P, Park Byung, Jake Song, or like someone like that. I know I'm kind of cheating. There isn't one. there really isn't a name. One that consistently comes out, takes criticism, comes out, actually talks about what they want to do, and doesn't just promise random shit. And actually interfaces with the community. The Western market has utterly failed at this. And look, I'm not celebrating our market failing in terms of video games lately, but that big video that came out by, I think it was Never Knows Best, is that his name? That talked about how gaming is kind of like floundering, and like people kind of reviewed it and felt that it's actually pretty accurate. To be clear, Raph and I spoke about that before that video came out. We spoke about that exact topic of the video. And Raph told me, yeah, it's a problem. And partly because design innovation is much more difficult than just copying the next big idea and doing the same thing. But no, it's a problem that the virtual world industry, especially one that could theoretically house the most innovation, right, doesn't. And that's why it's like so strange when back in the day people would just be like, yeah, but it's because WoW's the only one that will work. It's like, that was never true, and it still isn't true. And I'm not just saying that as a game, I'm saying that style of game. There's so many other styles of virtual world. Remember, VR chat is a virtual world. And to be honest, it's a pretty good one. Yeah, madness for sure. And to be clear, I know in other like genres, like fighting game genres, so on and so forth, there's big exceptions where the player base really has no fucking clue. But like with MMOs, it used to be that developers were the big brain dudes who could just like, you know, my power level 5,000, just like zap you by touching you. That hasn't been the case for like, for like 15 years, guys. And I've been in rooms with these guys for 15 years. And it's not getting better. It's not. It's getting worse. And many of those big names are either getting out of the virtual world space and doing other things, or retired. So we're losing more talent. Like, I've mentioned this before, but you guys know that the creator of Minecraft was a virtual world guy, right? And Minecraft was like his dream of like a procedurally generated world. And so it's like, yeah, maybe him, you know, spinning off kind of helped the industry to create Minecraft. But imagine if, like Raph made this point, imagine if Notch would have stayed in virtual worlds. And even after Minecraft, and would have just kept making those. Like, imagine what he would have been capable of? Sheesh. But the dude is like millionaire, quadrillionaire, and whatever he wants to do is up to him. But Ion 2 is supposedly, set for a release in Korea and Taiwan by the end of the year. Man. I might have to activate my Korean social security. You know what I mean? So this was a funny thread. And I guys, I like to troll a little bit. We're gonna troll. Guild Wars 2 PvP is actually good. I enjoy all game modes, but PvP has been my favorite. Somehow, Guild Wars 2 PvP is really fun. Somehow. Somehow, a video game that was built for super fast-paced reactions that plays like a fighting game that also has the choices of an MMO, somehow it's good at PvP. They liked both the instance stuff, which is called scenarios, or structured PvP, or the open world PvP. WoW was my go-to MMO PvP, but the queues seem to be getting longer. They talked about... What? They talked about having 220 ping on Guild Wars 2 and saying they're enjoying the game? Okay. Where's 0 cents? Let me ping 0, see. Okay, I just pinged 0, but like, I need 0 to help me respond to this as another like big Guild Wars 2 player. To be clear, you're never gonna get anywhere with 220 ping. Like, do you guys not know how competitive Guild Wars 2 is at the highest levels? It's so freaking competitive. You will never get high with 220 ping. How do I know that? When the game came out, or before it came out, I used to beta test the game. And I was on one of the top teams, Alpha Collective. They were like a top 3 team in beta. One of the other teams that was the top team of Europe, we used to scrim each other all the time. They're actually a sponsored team, a French team. I don't remember their name, but they're a French esports team. Maybe that gives you guys some information. But it's not Mouse Esports. It's not Denial. I think they're French, right? Or is that Denial Danish? Anyway, and we were playing against them. And whenever we would play on their servers, we would have around 200 ping. Guess what would happen? They would win the set. When they would play on our servers, guess what would happen? We would win the set. So, I have literal like data to back that up against the top players. Like, the ping was always enough of a difference for us to beat each other. And it's kind of a bit of a problem with the game, right? So the game is so reliant on these fast-paced interactions that it's not competitive for everyone else. And you might wonder, well then nerd, is it possible to make a game like that and make it for everyone? Yeah, actually, there is. Guild Wars 1 did it. But Guild Wars 1 didn't focus on fast-paced reactions. It focused on big brain stuff. Meaning that over time, you can get the knowledge you need to play the game. Okay, well then how do we fix Guild Wars 2 for Guild Wars 3? We've talked about this before, but I'm going to put a video out on this, actually. And I'm going to consult with my community, because we have a lot of fucking Guild Wars legends that play just as much as me, if not more, if I'm being honest. Maybe not Guild Wars 1. I don't think any of you guys got me beat in Guild Wars 1, okay? But in Guild Wars 2, I think 0 and a couple of the other guys, Mighty Teapot, these guys got me beat. They did world versus world raids. I just did structured. But anyway, how do you fix Guild Wars 2? Well, how did Street Fighter and the fighting games fix their games? They fixed them by adding easier inputs, by making combos easier, by just making the game easier, making it more accessible. So what do you do with Guild Wars 3? Let's say you keep the same engine. You need to get rid of everyone having a heal. That's actually a higher skill cap. Think about it. Everyone has to heal themselves? That's more skill required. You don't want that. I know it sounds great in theory, You don't actually want that, right? You need a support. Look at all the games that have it. Every MOBA, every online shooter, team shooter game, besides like Counter-Strike, have someone that's like a healer or a support. Guild Wars thought they could get rid of that, and yet still can't. In raiding, you still have healing supports. In high levels of PvP, you still have blast combo finishers for heals. So did they really fix the system? No, they made it harder, less accessible. So that's the first thing. Make it more accessible by making it easier to play, right? The meta easier. Power doesn't dominate if a healer is dedicated to healing, right? But power dominates in Guild Wars 2 because the game is so fast, right? Conditions take time. They're dominant. Trust me, I've smacked anyone in this chat with conditions, but they take more time to apply. So at the higher levels, and I can speak to this, you can get countered easily. And I was countered, I'll admit. And don't get me wrong, that's Guild Wars. You get countered. The problem is that it's easy to counter you, and then power becomes the only thing that replaces that. I enjoyed the episode on Asheron's Call for Your Death the Game series. Missed that game in that era of MMORPGs like no other. Yeah, so Asheron's Call, great example. We have a game that was able to, for 2 years, if not more, have an ongoing open world narrative unfold month by month with quests and discovery. And we can't have that for MMOs in modern times? One thing I realized is that sometimes my back in my day would get seen as back in my day, like your dad or your mom would do, your grandparents. Like I grew up with my grandparents mostly. But like, no, it's actually because back in my day and back in that day, the games were more inventive. They were doing more things. Did you guys know that Final Fantasy XIV has like a really high percentage of female players? But did you also know what the second game that comes to mind that also had an insanely high percentage? No, I'm not gonna say the virtual world simulator games like Second Life and what's the other one? Damn it, Second Life and what's the other one? Oof, there's a lot of other virtual world avatar games, but I cannot remember them off the top of my head. That's embarrassing. Anyway, what were we saying before that? Fuck. Oh, right. UO, Ultima Online. They put out an article on like a major outlet. I think it was Wired or fucking like, I don't know, someone like a major outlet, like PC Magazine or some shit. It was like a major outlet put out in 2001 that guys go to Doom and girls go to UO. Because so many girls were playing UO. UO is one of the most hardcore games in existence. So, how does this... And yes, a lot of women played D&D, and D&D's hardcore too. But how do you, like... How does this make sense? It's because UO offered a lot more to do than just kill each other, right? It's that simple. Because not just that girls don't like to just kill each other, I get bored of just killing each other. That's why I love Galaxy so much. In Galaxies, I can go to a cantina and just watch someone dance and just chat with my friends. You know, it's very, like, relaxed. Okay, now my lighting is looking worse. Let's fix it. Okay, is that better? I'm looking ghostly today. I don't know what it is. But anyway, let's respond to this Guild Wars 2 video, or article, post. I'm smart. Unfortunately, yes, the PvP in Guild Wars 2 is good, but it's too good. It's not easy and accessible enough for everyone else, and the developers just never really put much effort into it after they promised to. So the scene died very quickly. So Guild Wars 3 has the potential to make one of the best PvP games ever. Let's see if they learn from their mistakes. So I think this was, like, always gonna happen. But Brighter Shores came out with an update to merge the combat professions. I made this prediction on stream. And the reason that I did is because either you just let your game die because of how you feel about things, because this is a multiplayer game, or you realize that most people weren't okay with that, and you make the changes. And that's the thing is like developing is hard, and creating a world and even being a DM in D&D is hard, because you have to do controversial things and kind of take your own path. But the thing is about those positions is that you can always like go left when you could have gone right. Meaning that like if your adventurer party hates like long dialogue, just quietly crumple up that piece of paper you made for that D&D campaign and just attacked by trolls. Get what I'm saying? You gotta be able to change your plan when the majority of your audience isn't responding well to it, especially if they like the rest of the game, which I like Brighter Shores. I don't like that combat system thing. It turned me off almost like immediately. So I might even come back and try it again after they change this, to be honest. There was a new patch that came out, and I think this is an expansion, but the pre-patch expansion, or the patch before the expansion, Undermined. Launching February 25th, new story and quests, warbands, a new dungeon, a new tank spec, a new zone, the drive feature, joining the cartels, which I'm guessing is like a quest thing, a new PvP arena, and some new like content shit at the bottom. The reason why I'm even showcasing this is that like WoW has clearly changed to a different style of expansion. They're not going for as big as they were before, probably because the return on the investment isn't as good for them anymore. But what annoys me about like Blizzard, and I always talk about Blizzard when I talk about annoyances with virtual worlds, because Activision Blizzard is probably like the biggest example of this. Imagine Band-Aid created the Band-Aid, and everyone was calling virtual worlds the Band-Aid, or every bandage the Band-Aid. And then suddenly Band-Aid just decided to like not really put much effort into their Band-Aid anymore, and not even make other Band-Aids. So guess what all the other companies did? They made Band-Aids in different styles. Now this doesn't actually happen because Band-Aid makes like every style Band-Aid. They're just the biggest Band-Aid company, who essentially trademarked the word and made it associated with the company, which is genius. And while that's not inherently true with WoW and virtual worlds, most people think about WoW when they think about virtual worlds. Activision Blizzard took a lead in that field so great that $100 million games died trying to emulate it, and just gave it up. Just gave up the lead. Like, we're up 100 points. Let's let them run the clock up, you know? And then next thing you know, they're getting outscored. Next thing you know, they're not really doing that. And worse, you can't fix it by fixing your old game, because your world and your container's old. The engine's ancient. Even if you redo it, it's not gonna fix the never-ending loss of players, because you're not innovating in your engine anymore. The gameplay's feeling dated. The world doesn't hit as cool as it could have. What I'm trying to say long-windedly, in a sense, is that by Activision Blizzard not making another WoW, they basically just gave up their market share. It's fucking bizarre to me. Like, I think they're gonna get studied, especially as virtual worlds become more understood, of like, how can you lose such a lead? Like, it's just like insane. And yeah, people are gonna say, but they tried Titan. It's like, okay, but like, what about WoW 2? The easiest dub for them ever. How is it an easy dub? Couldn't they just not want to play the new game? Great. Keep developing the old game like they were already doing. And then develop the new game. Like the Korean audience has been doing now for like 20 years. That's why the West is behind. Because we're not learning. And we, for some reason, because a couple of MMOs tried sequels in like the early 2000s, we just gave up on doing them. Yeah, madness. Basically, you would level up your combat profession, go to a new zone, and your guy would suffer from amnesia, like BioWare style, and you would just like not know what to do. It was bizarre. Like, for someone who cares a lot about immersion like me, I mean, I love Kingdom Come Deliverance. I love playing every game I play on the hardest difficulty, except if it's like a cartoonish hardest difficulty. But just because I love feeling like connected to my character, I don't want to die here, you know, like that kind of stuff. Immediately stopped playing the game as soon as I heard that. Ruins my immersion. And it's funny because the argument I made regarding it is that their argument is that, yeah, but then anyone can join in any time, and they're not getting level gated. So your solution was that over general immersion for the rest of us? I don't get that. That's not a good trade. Nobody wants that trade. I would never accept that trade. And I didn't. Blizzard was the WoW killer all along. They were. It's sad, because literally all they had to do was take the same exact ideas. Same ideas. Just do a little bit more maybe that you couldn't have done in the past. In a better container, with better gameplay, but the same exact mechanics. And even if that wasn't a major hit, they could have recouped on it, and they could have kept milking the first game. Instead, they started making other games. You know what I'm saying? Basically, like, they went to other genres. And now you have Final Fantasy XIV, like, here with them. And it's fucking hilarious to me because that's their own fault. Not that Final Fantasy XIV wouldn't have always been a player there, but I can not even deny this for a second. They wouldn't be as competitive if WoW didn't have another game. Let's be honest. It's going through the sad OSTs right now for Conan. That's my shit. Nah, but I'm about to head out, guys. Any other questions before I dip? I want to actually focus more on writing today, since I'm writing Paladins today. Since Multiverses is already done, it'll be edited and launched this week. Remember when I said that we're going to be putting out more videos? I wasn't lying. We have a team of editors now, and a production schedule that's going through like fairly quickly. I would say very quickly. And yeah, and we're going to keep responding to feedback. So like you guys have been doing, as you can see that there's things that are changing, please make sure to give us feedback. Let us know if something sucks or you like something new. And of course, as always, what you want us to cover next. So, on that note, I think I'll head out. But let me go ahead and hit the music for real this time.